Welcome to Season 2 of the Shooters Only podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Cadiz, alongside co-hosts
Darren Jung
and
Garrick Garcia.
We'll bring you the latest NBA news and hottest basketball takes every single week. Fantasy sports, NFL, the MLB, we'll sprinkle that in for you too. No matter the sport, we have the data to back up our opinions. And like my boy Klay Thompson says,
Shooters keep shooting.
Hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks for subscribing to our YouTube channel, everybody. Shooters Only Podcast. This is the first podcast episode with our faces on it going up to our YouTube channel. So to introduce everybody, I'm your host, Brandon Cadiz, alongside Darren Jung and Garrick Garcia. Thanks for following us through Spotify, Apple Music, and however you listen to your podcasts. And it's such a joy and honor to be able to bring you guys our YouTube channel, already at 80 subscribers. So shout out to everyone for subscribing, and to our main guy here in Garrick Garcia for helping us market and getting our followers up on YouTube within the past week.
I had to get right for the YouTube channel. I have a little scruff at the bottom of my chin, but it's all right.
All right, Kelly Oubre, let's calm down there.
This light making me look real good.
Yeah, I have no light and I have a hoodie on, but it's all business. We're hoodie mellow right now. That's the vibe I'm going for right here.
We're all business here. And make sure to follow us on Instagram, Shooters Only Podcast, there as well. And of course, our YouTube channel. And please continue to listen to us on however you listen to your podcast. Pretty big news in the NBA this week. A lot to cover like every single week. But before we get started, we got to address the issue yesterday. Kobe Bryant's 1-year death anniversary took a toll there on the NBA 1 year ago with Gigi Bryant and the other family members there and friends that were associated in that helicopter crash. So we'd like to give out our condolences there. And also to a legend in the NBA business in Sekou Smith, passed away yesterday due to COVID complications, a beat writer for the Pacers, the Hawks, for NBA TV, and for TNT. So as us basketball podcast, we'd like to extend our thoughts and prayers to both families after those events yesterday. So after that news, let's get right into some more upbeat news here. And as we do every single week, we got to talk about our Week 5 NBA Players of the Week. And that starts off with Nikola Jokic in the Western Conference, 29 points, 14 rebounds, 6.7 assists, 3-0 record for the Nuggets for Week 5. And for the Philadelphia 76ers, the best team in the East record-wise, Joel Embiid, monster week, 37.7 points, 11.7 rebounds, shooting 61% from the field, and a 3-0 record for the number 1 seeded Philadelphia 76ers. So I'll let you guys take the floor here. Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets looking real good, especially with Michael Porter Jr. returning as well.
Yeah, I mean, Nikola Jokic and Embiid, I think those guys along with LeBron are the 3 front runners for the MVP right now. I'm looking at Jokic's numbers, 25, 12, and 9. He's basically putting up 2016 Westbrook numbers, but on actually pretty good efficiency. So, I mean, this guy just keeps on getting better every single year. I'm kicking myself right now for not taking him in fantasy, though.
Do we really have to throw out Russell Westbrook's name right now? Isn't it hard enough being on the Washington Wizards, Darren, after what we said about them earlier in the year?
I mean, shouldn't we have expected this after I said they're going to be having home court advantage in the first round, and they're looking like now the front runners for Cade Cunningham?
It's okay.
I mean, it's the Darren curse.
I said the same thing.
It was inevitable.
They look so good on paper, but getting back to the main guys, Nikola Jokic, 30 PER right now. I think he's right below Giannis Antetokounmpo's MVP year that he had last year at about 31. So in that sense, he's a guy who's going to fill it up for you at all times, and the way he's able to run that offense just at the top of the key, even from all the way at the other side of the court and some of those outlet passes he's able to give you as soon as he gets the rebound, his offense is crazy, obviously. And he's leading the team in points this year. And that's always been a thing for him that we've been worried about, just him not being aggressive enough. But we know he's a clutch god, too, because he'll just be scoring in the clutch willy-nilly whenever he wants. And Shaq has been talking a lot lately. And one guy he's talked about recently has been Joel Embiid, and even in years past. And Joel Embiid seems to be taking that next step with Ben Simmons kind of having his foot off the gas at times. So I think that's the thing I'm really looking towards, just as far as who in the East is really going to be dominant outside of KD. And I think I'd have to tip my hat to Joel right now, just as far as who has the top MVP vote for me, because him being at the top of the East, like you said, Brandon, is very impressive.
I think also what for me puts Joel as well at the top of the MVP standings is his defense, because I think right now it's probably between him, LeBron, and Jokic. And right now I'm looking at the stats. When Joel Embiid's on the floor, the 76ers are the number one defense in the NBA right now. And when he's off, they're around league average. So he's kind of having a season like Giannis last year, right, where he's playing both sides of the floor really well. I think I should have listened to myself at the beginning of the season when I said he was a dark horse MVP candidate, maybe put some money on that, but oh well, here we are.
And I think Denver's not even at their potential yet. We've seen a slow start to Jamal Murray, and since Michael Porter Jr. has come back, they look like a pretty great duo now with MPJ and Nikola Jokic. So if we get Bubble Murray, that's a big three there that could be scary in the Western Conference. And to your point of the Philadelphia 76ers tonight, they have a big game taking on the number one team in the Western Conference, your guys' Los Angeles Lakers. And as we transition to top performances this week, I got to mention LeBron James' game against his former team, the Cleveland Cavaliers, on Monday. 46 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 steals and 2 blocks. I know load management has been a question this season for the Lakers. How does this make you feel about LeBron's rest? And do performances like this, especially for LeBron in his, many seasons in the NBA, get you excited at the Lakers' chances for a repeat?
I mean, in my mind, there's no doubt that the Lakers are the favorites right now. And I'm not even saying that as a die easy Lakers fan. But I think the most surprising thing to me right now is the way LeBron is kind of playing with the effort we were expecting from AD. I think a lot of people in the NBA community was thinking AD was a big time MVP candidate going into this year, but it seems like he's the one actually coasting, and LeBron's really the one going for MVP, playing super hard every night. We saw that game in Cleveland. That was probably one of the best regular season games I've ever seen a player play, honestly, especially after that, what was it, the guy in the Cavs front office talking crap to LeBron at the end of the third quarter, and he goes on to score 20 in the fourth.
Yeah, to your point earlier, Darren, too, just about the AD thing really quickly. I remember ESPN or Bleacher Report right before the season started, they released the top 100 players or so, and we were pretty confused about some of the rankings, and we talked about it a little, I think, on maybe episode 31, something like that. It was a few weeks back. Anyway, the main thing was that they put Anthony Davis at number 2, and a lot of people had a problem with that at the time. And I still think he's the top number 2 guy in the league, obviously, but he's even admitted that he's playing like what lately, and he hasn't been up to caliber. So in that sense, I think LeBron has had to take that extra step, and I don't know. It's something about being back home for these guys, because we saw AD in Chicago drop 37 and 6, and then we saw what LeBron did when he was back home in Cleveland. So I think in that sense, they have that takeover mentality, and I think LeBron is feeling real good because Alex Caruso is shooting about 55% from 3 right now. KCP's up there in the high 40s. Everybody just seems to be clicking from 3. Those 2 LA teams are really just shooting the deep ball very well. So I think in that sense, he's not afraid to make those passes. He's not afraid to drive. He knows he has Dennis Schroeder, Montrezl Harrell, AD to bail him out whenever he needs to, if he needs to be bailed out. And I think that's giving him supreme confidence so he can have those nights where the attention isn't fully on him.
Going back to AD, I'm just going to speak as a frustrated Lakers fan. There's just been so many games where you don't even notice he's out on the court and he's just scoring like 13 or 15 points, looking like a ghost. And that's kind of been a theme throughout his whole career, where this guy has all the talent and he's not really producing like and dominating the way you want to. And I mean, if LeBron's the best player on the best team at the end of the season, I really wouldn't be surprised if he's MVP, even though we were just hyping up Joel Embiid.
Yeah, and read my mind there. So my question is here, his stats might not be up there compared to those other guys that we mentioned in Jokic and in Embiid, or maybe even Kevin Durant in terms of efficiency. But if he has the best record, does that ultimately cement him on top over those other candidates that we mentioned?
Well, I think MVP is what 75% narrative and 25% actual stats and how you've played. And I think LeBron has the best narrative going for him because he won the title last season. I think most people think he's the best player in the world. He's on the best team, and he hasn't won one in a while. So there is that buzz from guys like Nick Wright and Colin Cowherd saying, "Oh, why has LeBron haven't won MVP? He's been the best player in the world the past 10 years." So I think definitely LeBron's the front runner. I just convinced myself mid-podcast.
Garrick.
This guy. I agree with Darren in a lot of ways, but here's where I think I don't fully agree, even though I'm probably the biggest LeBron stan on the podcast, arguably, as we've seen on Lakers Twitter 2.0, as some of my friends like to call me at times. But I just think Kevin Durant has a real chance, honestly, and not just a real chance, but I think really is the front runner, because when you talk about narratives, Darren, who has the biggest narrative right now? This guy's the Slim Reaper on the comeback tour. He's coming and he's killing people out here left and right, man. Like, he just looks nasty. He looks like he doesn't care about anybody. He doesn't care about their feelings. If you got on Twitter with him, that might be a different story depending on which burner account you find him on. But overall, I think he just wants it the most, and he's the guy that I'm really scared of seeing, obviously, at all times. And I think LeBron has some of that voter fatigue, honestly, because, like you said, Darren, the last 10 years, everybody has said, yeah, he's the best player in the world. But it seems like we're always trying to crown a new king, if you will.
I was thinking Giannis might be the one with voter fatigue just because he has won the last two MVPs and he did disappoint in
Yeah,
last
I
year's
don't think there's
playoffs.
any way Giannis is even contention this season for that. And I'll have to agree there with my man Garrett Garcia in that the narrative I think fits better with Kevin Durant coming off that Achilles injury, finally playing and dominating within these first couple of games in the season. And especially because now you have two superstars with you, Kyrie Irving and also James Harden. And from that point on, we've seen James Harden actually take a step back and just assist the crap out of that ball these past couple of games since he's joined Brooklyn. So I think that even increases his chances of winning the MVP. And
Can I zag a little right here? In my eyes, I think, don't you think a lot of people are going to see that James Harden trade and go, all right, Kevin Durant, you're on a super team now. And we've never seen a guy on a super team really win MVP, right? LeBron never didn't win an MVP, at least his first year in Miami. KD or Steph never won a team in Golden State. Do you think a lot of voters are going to see that James Harden, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving and go, you have too much help. How can you be the MVP?
I think it would be time for that to change. And I don't think you have a better person than Kevin Durant to do that, because right, we remember this was a guy in Golden State who joined the 73-9 team the year prior, and now he moves on. And there's a narrative of him trying to win a title with a team that belongs to him. And I think this is honestly Kevin Durant's team right now. You know, Kyrie Irving has missed that time. James Harden just joined the team. So he's the one that technically has had these guys come to him, minus Kyrie Irving, because he was there before any of them. But my point here is that if it's a narrative and the writers want to help out Kevin Durant's legacy, I think this would be the best year to do it, because he'd be the first time that really somebody from a super team, as you mentioned, Darren, to add on to those accolades and MVPs back then for KD.
You're the real MVP.
And I think also somebody who's coming back from a major injury too. So I think in that sense, just you seeing him, that he's been struggling, obviously, if you remember before this season, and you just keep that in your mind as a voter. I think a lot of people are going to probably feel somewhat a sense of pity for him even a little bit, just not of the fact of the player he is now, because he's still obviously elite, maybe the second best player in the world right now, I would say. But at the same time, just remembering what he was and how he went out a year or two ago. So I think in that sense, it's going to be hard for people to overlook that, and just his story as a whole. Plus, being in Brooklyn, I think helps a lot. And now he really has his own team, to your point, Brandon, because it's not like he's really the face of the super team. I think in Golden State, he was still the best player, but it wasn't like he was the face because Stephen Curry obviously was there.
Well, we could agree to disagree on this one, guys. I'm just going to add in one more dark horse. I don't think he's going to win, but let's give some credit to Kawhi Leonard, my guy, averaging 26 points on a legit 50, 40, 90 from the field. Also 2 steals a game. I think him and the Clippers have been quietly, I think they're in their second or first place in the West right now. So got to give Kawhi Leonard some love.
If Kawhi's 9, Paul George is 10. Clippers have been balling from 3. They're all hyper efficient right now. Everybody.
Yeah.
No, everybody's Kawhi, 50, 40, 90.
Yeah, Kawhi Leonard, I don't think he sees his chances there. Kevin Durant is second in the league at 30.4 points per game, right behind Bradley Beal at 34.4 points per game. And transitioning this to last night's game with the Washington Wizards taking on the Houston Rockets, we saw DeMarcus Cousins have one of his better games this season, with Christian Wood being out and helping the Houston Rockets team there. John Wall, we saw what he could do last night, as well as Victor Oladipo. But the main man we want to talk about is Bradley Beal. And he went off last night, as he always does, scoring 30-plus points. But it was what he did off the bench, or on the bench, to say, him praying, having his head down in his hands shivering. It's a time for Washington to just trade this man. He's given it all. He's done it in a professional way. He hasn't demanded a trade like other players have, like James Harden, of trying to just baby their way out of a situation. Does Bradley Beal deserve a shot of just getting traded from Washington?
I mean, I think we're all going to come to a consensus here, but absolutely. I had really high hopes for this Washington Wizards team, but it just really hasn't panned out. I love Isaac Bonga and Robin Lopez, but when both those guys are playing 30 minutes a game for you, Bradley Beal, it's time to get the hell out. I mean, you're averaging 35 points a game. You're 27. You're in the prime of your career. Go play some winning basketball. Go play some playoff basketball.
Yeah, Darren's mentioned it before, and I think he was even on Twitter saying this, but I think obviously the Sixers would be a great landing spot for him. I was thinking about it. I know you want Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid, obviously. I think Joel Embiid, the way he's playing right now, is untouchable. But even though my main man, Ben Simmons, I love this guy, but it feels like he's kind of stagnated, honestly. And we even brought that up in kind of our redraft when we did for the 2016 draft class in one of our first episodes that we did on the podcast. And I don't know if the Sixers still are willing to hold on to him if Bradley Beal is on the table, because I know you're still the top team in the league. I think you have to see where you are, obviously, and really feel that out, just because you don't want to mess up chemistry when you really have something good going. But we know come playoff time, he's been a guy who's gone silent, especially when he's in a half-court offense and he can't really just run and gun, right? So I think in that sense, maybe you have to think about it a little. And another guy I was thinking about is, can you just try to flip Tobias Harris and just give them a bevy of picks and assets? Maybe you have to include a Tyrese Maxey. You have to include a bunch of other guys.
You're saying picks. Like something similar to like the Brooklyn trade, where you just give up everything, like your next 8 first-round picks?
Yeah, because I know they've traded a lot of picks and a lot of assets so far, but I do believe they still have a Miami pick in the future. And they still have a decent amount of seconds. And I know you're not really looking at that and saying, oh, yeah, this is what we're getting back for Bradley Beal. I don't really like that. But when you look at guys like Maxey, like I said, or Thibault also, you might really have to think about that. And I don't know if anybody wants to talk about a possible Nuggets trade too, because I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I was just about to talk about the Nuggets. Either Michael Porter or Jamal Murray. I think that's the easiest easiest trade to see for me in my eyes, especially Jamal Murray, because I think you want to keep Michael Porter Jr. And if you have Beal, Michael Porter Jr., Jokic, you got your guard, your wing, and your big man. That's a pretty dangerous team out in the West.
I agree there, Darren. I've been a big stan of Michael Porter Jr. Drafted him in my fantasy team, as I've mentioned, ever since the bubble last season. I've been high on him, and I don't think they trade him. We've seen what he's been able to do, 30-point performances, grabbing 10-plus boards. Would like to see his passing skills improve, but if you were able to get rid of Jamal Murray, throw in a couple other players there, maybe a Gary Harris or a Paul Millsap, include a couple of picks there to match contracts, ship him over down to Washington, I think Jamal Murray would thrive there, having a ball-dominant point guard, be in his hands, take those shots. And, hey, it could just be like Wall and Westbrook all over again, but this time down in Washington with Westbrook and Jamal Murray. I think what really went downhill for the Wizards this year was Thomas Bryant's injury. I think he played a crucial role because he had a hot start to the season, having a monster year. I think he was shooting it at above 60%, which put him on par with Zion Williamson for field goal percentage. I think they could have done a better job there. But to regress here, that would be a great trade scenario. But I don't know if Utah has enough assets to make the trade happen, but I would love for him to join the Utah Jazz. Add another firepower type of player there to lead with Donovan Mitchell. I know you're not the biggest Donovan Mitchell fan here, Garrick, but Donovan Mitchell and Bradley Beal with Rudy Gobert would be really nice to see. I don't know who they give up. They don't have that many star players. If you throw in Bogdanovich, a Clarkson, a couple picks, Royce O'Neal maybe. I don't even think that sounds nasty, even me saying that. But I just wanted to transition this to the Utah Jazz, winners of 9 straight, a contender there in the West. And as I asked you guys last week, do we see them finishing top 4? And they're just half a game behind now your guys' Los Angeles Lakers. And I really like this Utah team. They are number 1 in 3-point percentage, 3-pointers made. And after the Warriors game, in which they absolutely killed my Warriors, Steve Kerr said that this team reminded him of the Warriors a couple of years ago in the terms of spacing, shooting, finding the open shooters. And they're the only NBA team to be in the top 5 for both offensive and defensive efficiency.
Yeah, also not to mention 3rd in net rating, right behind the Lakers and the Clippers. So they're right up there with the elite teams. This is one of, I think, my only take from the preseason that's actually come somewhat into fruition. I thought the Jazz would be the 2nd or 3rd best team in the West this year, with the addition of Bogdanovich coming back. But I think the biggest thing for them has been Mike Conley going back in the time machine and playing like Memphis Mike Conley. I think
I'm gonna pull out Garrick's receipts.
He's finally adjusted to playing with Rudy Gobert. I think all those years playing with I'm gonna be nice here, a grounded center in Marc Gasol and Zach Randolph, and going transitioning to like more of a lob threat with Rudy Gobert. I think it took a little time last year, and he's finally looking like the guy they traded for. So I think him, Mitchell, and not to mention Clarkson, coming out of nowhere, really, 17 points a game on 48% from the field. We'll see how sustainable that is. But this Jazz team, the problem was always offense, and now they got plenty of it.
And we can't talk about the Jazz without playing our weekly Jazz sound clip and sound effect that we do every single week. Let's play that right now.
You guys lose game or did the
Jazz
Jazz
continue
win
to
this
win,
one?
winners of 9 straight. And all I got to say is, I said this at the start of the season, and I'm said Mike Conley's gonna Mike Conley, right? We know what he did with Utah, a couple of years ago, back in those Memphis days with the grind father and Tony Allen. Love those matchups with the Warriors way back then in the Western Conference Finals, semifinals. And you know what Mike Conley's going to bring you? He's going to give you assists. He's going to give you that mid-range jumper. Mike Conley was D'Lo before D'Lo for all you youngins out there. He's the type of guy that will score in the mid-range game, help you out in the three-pointers.
Let's put some respect on Mike Conley's name, Brandon. Come on. Mike Conley's actually been to the playoffs and won some series.
I'm just trying to have a comparison here to all of our young viewers and get them educated on Mike Conley. He's a playmaker. He's the type of guy that's just going to win you some games, and I think it's paid dividend for Utah for sticking with a veteran this year.
You know, my favorite word, disrespectful. We're not going there today. Today it's egregious. That's going to be the word of the day. And you know who they're facing in the first round right now? I know this isn't actually going to be the matchup, but the
Phoenix Suns.
2-7 battle would be the Phoenix Suns. I don't know if they beat the Phoenix Suns, honestly.
Oh, come
Let
on.
me tell you why. Mikal Bridges, he looks like a guy the Jazz used to have back in the day. AK-47, Andre Kirilenko. This man is playing all types of defense.
No.
He's strapping up from three. It doesn't matter what he's doing. And I said, I think earlier in the season, DeAndre Ayton, he might end up being a top 5 center this year and possibly replacing Rudy Gobert.
But he's
Because this
not.
man offensively, he's a man-child. He's going to body you down low.
He's
And I
not.
think he's more playable in the postseason than Rudy Gobert is, just because once you go outside of the perimeter, I think he has a little more foot speed than Rudy. Rudy's not as comfortable once you go out on the perimeter. And then you still got Chris Paul, the ultimate clutch guy, the point god, top 5 point guard of all time if you're into advanced stats. And let's not forget Devin Booker, the ultimate bucket, arguably up there, I think maybe even a little better than Donovan Mitchell. I think I give the edge on defense with Donovan Mitchell, but you guys forgot to mention the most important stat, and this would have really won me over. Plus 7.2 in rebounds. That's the Utah Jazz for you. And that's going to really make the difference to me in the series if they were to play. That's the thing I'm looking at that's really going to change the tide of the game.
I'm not gonna let you slide on here with that DeAndre Ayton hype because we know he's had a down year. We want him to average 20 and 10. He's done it in a few games this season. I'm all for slandering DeAndre Ayton, as I've always said, because Rudy Gobert, as you said, on the offensive end, sure, he'll have that footwork, he'll have that athleticism. But Rudy Gobert, I know we've seen it in past playoff series, that he can't handle bigger, more athletic guards. But when you're Rudy Gobert, Defensive Player of the Year candidate, Defensive Player of the Year a couple of years ago, he's just unstoppable down in the paint, and he's having an efficient year this season, scoring down low. And when you're Utah, like what I've mentioned, and Steve Kerr saying if they remind him of the Warriors, he's not going to be the only guy to stop. You have wide open shooters that can shoot the ball in Mitchell and Royce O'Neal, Mike Conley, and Darren has mentioned Bogdanovic still hasn't found his shot this season, but once he does, it's going to be deadly all over for this Utah Jazz team. And I think that's why they're winning games, because they can shoot and they can rebound. Half of basketball right there.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Rudy Gobert. He got slandered by Shaq on Inside the NBA the other day, but
and Donovan.
12 points a game, but he's number 1 in the league in defensive rating and also number 1 in defensive win shares. So I think there is a case that he's still the best player on this team. I mean, that's how valuable this guy is on defense. Like, just have him on your team and you're a top 5 defense. It doesn't matter who's around him.
Great. Enough talk there for the Utah Jazz. We move on to the Dallas Mavericks. Currently, right now, Dallas sits outside of the playoff race at the 10th spot. And when we look at the numbers, since Kristaps Porzingis has returned, playing 7 games this season, Luka has had 4 30-point games and 4 20-point games for the unicorn himself. Will Dallas find its stride soon, as they sit out of the playoff race?
Am I the only one really concerned about Kristaps Porzingis being the second guy on this team with all the knee injuries he's had? I watched a couple of Dallas Mavericks games, like going in and out. He just doesn't look like the same guy from those Knicks days. I think his athleticism has diminished a lot. His shooting, he's still not. I think we think of him as an elite shooter, but he's still only shooting, I think this year, 30% from 3. I know this has nothing to do with the Mavericks season, but if you're the Mavericks, are you looking to move on maybe from Porzingis after this season as the second guy?
I've been saying it all along, man. Not that, but this. I think they need the third guy, honestly. I think to really make them elite and, those
Bradley
contenders
Beal?
that they need to be. Maybe. I don't even know what the package is, though. I think you might have to give up Mark Cuban's net worth or something to get Bradley Beal, because I don't even know the assets they have right now that could really realistically get him. But if they were able to do that, look out. Look out, world. I know even with the Mavericks, we thought Giannis might that might be a dark horse free agency place for him, just because they were forming all that European talent. So he was going to be another guy that Mark Cuban would have loved, obviously. But just as far as them as a team, I think not really having Josh Richardson for part of the year, Dwight Powell being out, they were a top pick and roll duo
Maxi
last year. Him
Kleba.
and Luka, Maxi Kleba,
Yeah.
all those guys.
I think they're the
I think it's
team,
hard.
maybe besides the Sixers, most hit by COVID. I mean, Finney-Smith, Kleber, Powell, Richardson, those are 4 guys that are all playing, 25 plus minutes a night for you?
Washington.
Mm. And we haven't even we forgot the glue guy. The man down there just getting all those steals, all those deflections. Dorian Finney-Smith, he's a baller out there. I know he's not the best player, but I do think he helps a lot with their defensive effort, and that's something luckily they've gotten better at. Before they were just an elite defense or elite offense, excuse me. Their defense has gotten better over time. I think especially adding a Josh Richardson, but just not having some of those guys is going to make it really hard for them to get those stops, especially when you're expecting, like you said, Darren, a guy whose athleticism might be waning already at 24, 25, and Kristaps Porzingis. And Luka Doncic, who we know is not the most athletic guy in the league, but still 6'8", still solid frame, but just not that guy on the perimeter at all
27-point triple-double.
Yeah, but that has nothing to do with defense.
And out of shape.
Yeah, no, that's fair. But I think that's just the main concern for them, just the injuries and the defense. So it kind of sounds like a little bit of the Nets, honestly. Just a lot of star power, but not quite the same level of defense, even though that's really the only comparison I can make.
I still think when they get these guys back, though, especially Richardson, Finney-Smith, and Kleba, the defense will figure itself out. This team's making the playoffs. I mean, too much. Luka's too good, and then there's too much talent. I mean, in the preseason, weren't we talking about how we love their offseason and how they surrounded Luka with all these 3-and-D guys? So I think I'm still holding strong on that take. I'm not selling
They're
yet.
gonna beat the Clippers in 7. Don't at me. Porzingis isn't. If Porzingis was there, they beat the Clippers in 7. But that's none of my business.
Yeah, I think that was a great point when you started off this segment here, Darren, saying that KP isn't a great 3-point shooter. That may be a reason for that. His athleticism might have been down, but he's shooting at a career high 47% from the field. So his 2-pointers are looking good. He's shooting efficiently there. So maybe that ramps up with the 3-point shooting down the line when they get those other guys back. But one more segment here on the NBA before we have to talk about the NFL and the AFC and NFC Championship games that happened over the weekend. So a little injury news here from around the NBA that we want to update you guys on, because you might have these guys on your fantasy team, and that's Wendell Carter Jr. for the Chicago Bulls, out 4 weeks with a right quad contusion. He'll be reevaluated in 4 weeks. So you got Zach LaVine there, Kobe White, and now we might see an increased role there for Lauri Markkanen, maybe Patrick Williams as well, or Otto Porter Jr. And the other news was Caris LeVert. We were trying to wait last week if that tumor was cancerous, and indeed it was. He underwent surgery for cancer treatment. Caris LeVert, it was surgery to treat his renal cell carcinoma on his left kidney. The team announced on Tuesday, and LeVert will be out indefinitely, expected to make a full recovery. So as we talk about Caris LeVert, and we did last week, and now, I mean, what a trade, right? Really, God had his hands in this, say, in terms of just, if that trade didn't happen, he could have probably lost his life if they didn't find that.
Yeah, I mean, I think as NBA fans, we're all thankful for Caris LeVert in that trade, because it did really might have saved his life. And going back to the Wendell Carter piece, I think Garrick has him in fantasy. So I'm sorry about that, Garrick, but hard to feel sorry about a guy that's in, I think, second or first place. What do you guys think about replacements for him? Because I'm looking at the team right now. Thaddeus Young. He's averaging 10, 5 and 4. And I'm looking at my guy, Lauri Markkanen, who's already the second leading scorer on the team, averaging 19 a game. As an owner of him, I'm hoping that goes up maybe to 23, 24 points a game. Allow him to play a little more center.
Yeah, I think he's going to be playing a lot, obviously. I think, Wilt Chamberlain III, as the meme has become, Otto Porter Jr. I think he's probably going to get way more rebounds. So in that sense, those are guys I'm looking towards. And Patrick Williams is probably a flyer guy, right? Like you said, Brandon.
Could
And
Otto
also,
Porter
if you
Jr.
have,
be the grandson of a Wilt Chamberlain?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, if you have guys playing against the Bulls, absolutely start them without Wendell Carter, because if they're playing Lauri Markkanen at the 5, it may be good for my fantasy team that he's going to be scoring, but teams are going to be going off against him inside because that's little to no rim protection.
A lot
So,
of
yeah,
offensive
Chicago Bulls.
firepower. They have a lot of offensive firepower, but the defense has definitely been lacking.
Yeah.
When you're looking at Denzel Valentine and Otto Porter Jr. to really stop guys, I think it gets kind of dire from there on out.
Yeah. Well, we said we'd update you on the injuries, and that was a few of them. Now we want to talk about some rookie leaders here in the NBA this season. And this is our rookie of the year race currently right now in the NBA. And it seems like it's only a two-man game. And throwback to the 2009 year where you have two guards at it with Tyreke Evans and Stephen Curry. You get a Sacramento guard here and Tyrese Haliburton taking on the Charlotte Hornets LaMelo Ball. And it seems like 1 and 2, those are the top tier rookies so far, at least in my opinion. Let's get your guys' thoughts into this discussion.
Yeah, I'll just talk about LaMelo really quick. I think he had a really good start to the season, but I want to say the past 5 games it's been pretty dire for him. I think teams are adjusting a little bit, making him shoot from the outside. But I think he's still playing well for a rookie. I mean, you still see that passing vision. We didn't think the 3-point percentage was going to stay at 35%. It's not. So I think the moral of the story of that is teams are adjusting to these rookies, whether it's LaMelo or even James Wiseman, who we saw go to the bench a couple of games ago.
I don't know if this is the best comparison, but I feel like Tyrese Haliburton right now, he kind of looks like Jalen Rose or like an efficient, RJ Barrett. I know another guy was compared to is Lonzo Ball. I feel like he looks like college Lonzo Ball to me right now, honestly, because those threes are going in at a pretty exciting clip. He's in the high 40s, low 50s most of the time on his percentages at the end of games. And he's a guy that I saw the Ringer highlighted last week. So shout out Kevin O'Connor, all those guys at the Ringer, they do great work. And he was saying that he was at 67% true shooting percentage and only a 15% usage rate. So I think he's the most winning rookie right now, just as far as what he's able to give you. I think he might even be better than LaMelo as of right now, not in the sense of a talent standpoint, but just his defense is a little more solid. I think he's willing to play defense. LaMelo Ball, now I'm talking about, but man, Tyrese Haliburton can get after it. He just looks like he's a veteran already. He's kind of like one of those guys also, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, if I'm throwing out another name, because he just looks like he's NBA ready. So
the Suns got to be kicking themselves for
it.
taking Jalen Smith 1 pick ahead of him. I mean, if he's on that team, which is already, I think we all agree has a good chance of making the playoffs, that'd be something special there in Phoenix.
The different levels, they would have just taken them to a whole nother level with this guy. Because right now I got to give it to Tyrese, because as Garrick has mentioned, that defense plays a factor in this. Not only that, but his shooting 50-40. So 50% from the field, 40% from beyond the arc. I mean, this is the rookie of the year that Sacramento deserves. I don't know about that Tyreke Evans thing back then. Being a Warriors fan, I think Curry got robbed there. But to get back to the point, Tyrese Haliburton looking like a veteran, as you mentioned. And there was the comparisons in this draft that he was going to come out, looking like Sean Livingston for the Golden State Warriors, back to the basket type of same body type, but he's definitely a better shooter, better defender. And I'm just glad that Sacramento can add another young piece to the equation. And like I said, though, it's hard for me. I know I'm a Warriors fan, but I for some reason I like the Kings, and they're not turning out so good again this year. And it seems like they're going to disappoint again. So I'm sorry, Sacramento fans.
The Kings are kind of like your loser friend, will never really surpass you in life. So you're just like always kind of rooting for them because they'll never be as good as you. I'm speaking if you're a Warriors fan, Brandon. I think that's where it's coming from. Anyways, getting back to Tyrese Haliburton, highest as Garrett to go off of Garrick's point, he has the highest box plus minus on the team, and it's 3 times more as De'Aaron Fox's, who's second. So I think that just shows what a great impact he has on the court, and it's something the regular box score stats don't show.
Very quickly,
Yeah.
Rashawn Holmes looks like a
Mhm.
most improved candidate. Also looks like possibly, could have been the 6th man of the year, but now it looks like he's going to be starting a lot of the time. And I just think I agree with Aaron Fox, De'Aaron's father. On Twitter, he made it a point to say this, but they might need to trade Marvin Bagley because
Oh
I
man,
don't
you're
think he's
telling
the
me to
guy right
liquidate the
now.
Bagley stock?
No.
You don't have to liquidate it. He might be going to the Pistons, Darren, so he'll be okay.
Oh
He'll
my god,
probably
then I
replace
definitely
Blake
gotta
Griffin.
liquidate it, Garrick.
No,
At least they'll put up 20 and 10 on the Pistons.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's gonna be an ugly 20
Yeah.
and 10, but it's still 20 and 10.
Yeah. When we look at the for fantasy wise though, when we look at the rookies too, Tyrese Haliburton, best rookie for fantasy basketball. So shout out to you if you drafted it, and to our league, a Sacramento fan drafted it, right? And your friend there and Philip, right?
Yeah,
Right,
shout
Darren?
out to my roommate Justin.
Oh, Justin, my
I kind
bad.
of reached for Tyrese Haliburton, but I told him, he's a steal. That's not a bad pick, and I think he's like what, top 10 point guard right now,
Yeah,
just based
he's
off of
solid.
his efficiency. Yeah.
Solid. Absolutely solid. Well, that is the only time we have for our NBA topics for the week. We got to transition over now to the NFL. And boy, were we treated to 2 great matchups in the NFC and in the AFC. We had the Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Buffalo Bills, and also the Tampa Bay Buccaneers taking on the Green Bay Packers. We know now who's in the Super Bowl, and that'll be Tampa Bay with Tom Brady taking on the defending Super Bowl champions and the Kansas City Chiefs. So the first game we'll take a look at is Buffalo versus Kansas City. Of course, I was the one that took Buffalo in this contest. My 2 co-hosts here, Darren and Garrick, sticking with the defending champions in the Chiefs, and it played out to be that way, favoring the Chiefs. But Buffalo just couldn't get the run game going. I said that Josh Allen was going to be the leader here in the run game, and I was right on that point. They just couldn't establish the run, and I think this is something that Buffalo has to improve in the offseason to get a solid running back.
Yeah, along with the running game, you said, Brandon, that was really dire. I think there's a lot of questionable 4th down decisions on Buffalo's end. I think I'm really highlighting that field goal on 4th down at the end of the first half, and also I think they kicked another field goal like at the 2-yard line at the start of the second half. You're not beating Patrick Mahomes with field goals. I think it seemed like basically every time they got the ball, Kansas City scored a touchdown. So I'm not saying they would have won if they went for it, but at least give yourself a chance. And as for Kansas City, this team looks unbeatable. I'm going to compare them right now to the 2017 Warriors with KD. This is a goddamn super team out there. They were down, 10-0, and I wasn't nervous for my pick. Patrick Mahomes, a 10-point lead is nothing to them. They're really like the super team Warriors with KD. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think to your point, Darren, just as far as kicking all those field goals, it seemed like Josh Allen kind of started a little slow out of the gate because overall he was 28 for 48, and that's fairly solid. I think that's around 60%. I'm not a math guy, but somewhere around there, and that's good enough, obviously, if you're a good quarterback. But at the same time, this is a guy who's trending towards that 67-70% mark a lot of the times during the season. And I think obviously you just have to be at the top of your game if you're going to be playing Patrick Mahomes, a perennial MVP candidate at all times, and maybe the best player in the league. You could even argue. I think I'd go as far to say that. So I think in that sense, it was just Josh Allen without that run game to really solidify, like you guys were stating earlier, his offense, and having to rely that whole load on him. I think it was just hard for him to overcome that, obviously, and you can't just settle, like you said, Darren. I think that was really the bane of the Bills' offense that day because Patrick Mahomes isn't going to throw many picks, as we've seen. Unless he's, playing at the Dolphins Stadium. But besides that, he's not really going to throw many picks. So you can't really capitalize if he doesn't make mistakes, and he didn't make too many, obviously, putting up 48 points.
Yeah.
I mean, go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, I just wanted to say real quickly that that me and Darren kind of lost out on some money last week. I did say that my bold prediction last week was Josh Allen was going to get his career or season high in rush yards over 70 yards, and he got 88 last week. So I don't want to know what the odds were for Bovada last week for that, but that would have been a solid bet, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, not to mention my Packers Chiefs money line parlay that I used the rest of my Bovada account on. Well, let's not talk about that. Maybe I should have put that in some GameStop shares. I just want to give credit to the Chiefs defense, because this is the Bills offense coming in that I think most of us are saying they're on fire. They won 10 straight games. Josh Allen's looking like an MVP candidate, and they blitzed him all day, and he looked like the most uncomfortable I've seen all season. So I got to give credit to the Chiefs defense, because I think Patrick Mahomes gets all the credit most of the time, but they really held up for him and prevented this from going to a shootout.
Yeah. That was the AFC game there. We will go to the NFC now and talk about Tampa Bay. Tom Brady heading to his 10th Super Bowl. And this guy leaves New England, has this amazing narrative coming into him in the Super Bowl. And now they will be the first team in NFL history to play in their own home stadium as they take down the Packers 31-26.
Aficionado.
And
Yeah.
for that, 31-26 as the Packers. I mean, the decision there to go for the field goal is what everyone's going to talk about. So we'll address that. And Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Rodgers' comments after the game where he was like, I don't know what my future is here. I'd be a little concerned if I was a Packers fan.
Yeah, he did
And
say he did say though on yesterday he joined the Pat McAfee podcast, and he did clarify that he sees no reason why he doesn't return to Green Bay, and the Green Bay GM came out too today saying that they want him back. Just wanted to add that on for some context.
Oh man, put on Marvin's Room for all the Niners fans out there. I think they're hoping he would James Harden his way out of there. But going back to that fourth round decision, in my opinion, indefensible. Aaron Rodgers probably going to win MVP this year. Just put the ball in his hands rather than try to get a stop on Tom Brady getting a first down. I don't really see where the logic is in that. And also them allowing that kind of Hail Mary touchdown at the end of the first half. I think those two plays kind of decided the whole entire game.
Yeah, Scotty Miller. I've said it once. I've said it again. You watch the Last Dance documentary. This man's John Paxson. He's just there, right place, right time. He's ready to make those clutch plays.
Deceptive speed, as they say. Real
yeah,
gym
I mean,
rat.
he was a
Real
track
gritty.
guy, I think, in college. D1 track guy, so you can't count him out. But just as far as the defense, I think the Bucs defense has been really going too. I know
Thank
they're
you.
a pretty good
Thank you for
defense to
bringing
start
that.
the year. Carlton Davis, he was one of those guys who helped shut down the Packers, I believe, in Week 6 when they won 38-10, 38-17, I want to say. I don't have it right in front of me, but I think the secondary is something that needs to be talked about more. Their O-line is pretty solid now when they got worse. So I think they've made improvements in a lot of places just from the draft and these young guys they have. And I think Levante David puts on a lot of pressure on those opposing quarterbacks. And I think the same thing can be said for Aaron Jones. We saw it seemed like sometimes the backup running backs had an easier time just finding those holes sometimes, or fighting through contact, because we know they're more of power guys back there in the backfield. And I think that was really the difference, because Devontae Adams is going to make plays. He's arguably the best wide receiver in the league. He can break down pretty much anyone, it seems like. But man, they were putting a lot of pocket pressure on Aaron Rodgers. And I know he's probably the pocket pressure captain, right? He's the guy you look to if anybody is going to get pressured in this league. But at the same time, we know what happens usually when he goes to the playoffs, and especially at that stage. I believe he's 1-4 now, and it's the first time Brady has ever been in the NFC, obviously. So in that sense, we see that it's just the Brady Invitational. Maybe it's going to become for the next 2 years if he ends up staying there for another year, depending on what happens with this bowl. But he's in Tampa, so I think he's got a lot going for him right now, obviously.
Yeah. Tom Brady was great this game. I mean, the 3 picks were bad
one of
in
those
the second
picks,
half. He might have not have been.
yeah, one of those picks I wouldn't really count. I mean, he underthrew it, kind of slipped out of his hands if you saw that one.
Yeah. 2 of them were almost kind of punts because they were on 3rd down and he threw it deep. One was really bad though because they were about to score a touchdown. But I think as much credit as I have to give for him on the field, I have to give him a lot of credit for his plays off the field, because just like LeBron, he chose the right team. He saw Tampa, the team, that's underperformed a lot lately, but they have a defense, they have playmakers. Just like LeBron, seeing, the Lakers, we have a lot of assets, we could trade it for Anthony Davis. And I think that's just what makes the great ones great. They know how to perform on the field, and also they make the right decisions off the
Niners
field.
fans, I'm telling you, I said this during the offseason. You called me crazy. You said you didn't want a 40-year-old quarterback over Jimmy Garoppolo. This could have been us. This could have been us this year.
Absolutely. If you put Tom Brady on that roster, they're making the Super Bowl.
Just wanted to shade my Niners fans out there. But now, to the point of Garrett Garcia. And thank you so much for bringing up the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, because Jordan Whitehead had a great game. 2 forced fumbles for him. The safety out of Pittsburgh playing for this Tampa Bay defense looked amazing. And also in Devin White, but also one of the most underrated linebackers, I think, in the NFL is Levante David. For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think he's going to be a great factor here come the Super Bowl, just like Fred Warner was for the 49ers last year against the Kansas City Chiefs. And Devin White with 9 tackles in this game. But I want to bring up Shaquille Barrett. 4 tackles in the game, 3 total sacks, and 2 tackles for loss. So if you bring that in there, taking on Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, I think that the defensive line here for Tampa Bay and their defense have been underspoken or not given enough credit throughout this entire season. And I think not only is this going to be a offensive shootout, but I think the defense for both teams are really strong. And I think this is almost a 50-50 coin flip. I know you all are taking, or at least for Darren, saying that Kansas City's offense looking like the Warriors there. But I think with Tampa Bay, you saw how great they played last week against Green Bay, and that's without Antonio Brown. But to be fair, too, they did not have Le'Veon Bell last week for the Chiefs, and he's expected to play in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, to add on to your point, Brandon, about the Bucs defense maybe giving Mahomes a little bit of trouble. I think his starting left tackle, Eric Fisher, tore his Achilles last week, and not to mention Mitchell Schwartz, their all-pro right tackle, is out for the rest of the season. So you're without both your starting tackles against those Tampa Bay edge rushers and Pierre Paul and Shaquille Barrett. So that could cause Mahomes some trouble if he's pressured. I'm not going to give up my pick this week, though. I know we're saving it for next week, our Super Bowl special show.
We are saving it next week. We're going to be talking a lot more NFL. Might slow down on the NBA next week. But, hey, we got to talk about the big game, man. For somebody here, too, I got to shout out my people from the Bay Area here, from my hometown in Tom Brady. Always performing every single year. But Vita Vea out of Milpitas High School here in the Bay Area, a true legend here to people in the South Bay. And you get 2 people here from the Bay Area. I'm just going to preview it by saying I'm of course a Tom Brady homer. Everyone knows this that listens to the podcast. So I'm going to be the one that'll kind of allude to where I'm going here with a Super Bowl.
Is this the most hyped Super Bowl you think? I feel like in a long time, right? Because you got the GOAT quarterback going against
the youngin,
maybe the greatest quarterback I've ever seen in Patrick Mahomes, talent-wise.
This reminds me.
Almost like.
Sorry to cut you off. Go ahead. But I just wanted to say that if we're having comparisons here to the NBA, and I like that Scotty Miller to John Paxson reference there by Garrick a couple minutes ago. This reminds me of Steph versus LeBron in the 2015 finals, where they first squared off against each other. You see a young guy coming in who's starting to get some talk around the league for, revolutionizing the game with these crazy highlight plays. And you got the veteran there, known as the guy that's been dominating the NBA the past couple of years. And now this case in Tom Brady. So this is the most hyped Super Bowl. I will have to agree with you there.
I might take it to another level, Brandon. This might have been like if Jordan took the Wizards to the finals in '07 and met LeBron in the
Ooh,
Cavs,
hot take.
because you got the GOAT in Brady, in Jordan, and then you got the upcoming guy in Patrick Mahomes / LeBron. So it's just going to be a really great game for both those guys' legacies. I mean, if Brady gets 7, it's kind of, I think the door's shut on Mahomes ever becoming the GOAT, right? Because Brady also beat him twice in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Michael Jordan in '07. What, is he in the retirement home already?
That's what I'm saying. That's why what Brady's doing is crazy, right? He's 43.
I guess so. I guess that's fair. But my point being, kind of what Darren was touching on a little earlier, was just if he gets 7, Tom Brady, that is, he's not only in the GOAT conversation. I think you could still compare him and Jerry Rice if you really wanted to go back and forth, because obviously quarterback's the most important position, but we all know how great Jerry Rice was back in the day. Deion Sanders, if you kind of want that deep cut pick, but he would be one of the greatest athletes of all time, I think, at that point. Obviously, one of the most dominant, definitively. And he'd be up there with people like Tiger Woods, Serena Williams, whoever you want to go with. Just, the people who've completely taken over their sport. Obviously, him and Michael Jordan, I think, are kind of neck and neck right now, just as far as how you'd want to compare them. And again, to Darren's point, if you wanted to think about Patrick Mahomes and if he could make his case easier for the GOAT, it would be starting here, obviously, because this is going to be the guy he needs to beat. And if he doesn't beat him, I think, like you said, the door is closed, because there's no sense of I can get 7. I don't think that's possible, just with all the talent we see coming up in the NFL and his $500 million contract. That's only going to keep going up, because most NFL historians know the first 4 years of a contract for a rookie QB are the best time to really win chips, because that's when you can afford all this top tier talent everywhere else on the field.
That's when you know he's a A+ Madden GM. That's respect, Garrick.
Appreciate it.
Not to mention Deshaun Watson going to the Jets, and they're about to be a super team. So be on the lookout for that one, guys.
Don't
Stop
count
the
out
Lamar slander.
Don't count out the Matthew Stafford-led 49ers next year, though, guys.
Bring up the stat, Garrick. Bring up the stat.
No, don't bring up the stat.
I'm just playing.
Don't bring up the stat.
52 against teams over 500. But I think that would change, honestly, in Shanahan's offense. Because Matt Patricia, that's not helping that 6 and 52. If anything, that's making it go down. We saw him give up 500 basically yards to Nick Foles. So I don't know how much of a defensive genius he was if he did that.
Yeah, so I want to bring this out to you guys, because we talked about 2 key players on the offense for both teams that were out last week. How big of a push, or how does it change the Super Bowl prediction with Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell playing for both teams in the Super Bowl?
For me, not much. I know those 2 guys. It's kind of ironic, right? The Steelers have the undefeated season, but the 2 guys that are outcasted are both in the Super Bowl. But the way I look at it, Scotty Miller's been great filling in for Antonio Brown. I mean, I think he adds that speed element. I mean, the deceptive speed, if we're keeping it PG-13. And Le'Veon Bell's washed up. I mean, I had Clyde Edwards-Helaire in fantasy, and I just hate that man, because he took away a lot of the carries and he wasn't as good. So I don't think it'll have too much of an effect. But I mean, if they do have Antonio Brown back, you can never have too many weapons for Brady.
Yeah, I think on the opposite line, just like you said earlier, with their 2 O linemen out, or the 2 tackles rather, it's going to be hard for them to make up ground. And if Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Le'Veon Bell can give you another look, Williams has also been really good too, out of the backfield, just filling in. I think that's going to be an integral, obviously, for them, because they're going to need to relieve pressure off of Mahomes. And even if Andy Reid really wants to get fancy and, run some of those wide receiver, kind of like Shanahan type sets where he has them running the ball, or they do some crazy things, maybe you could have Tyreek in there, but they're going to need to do some crazy things. And I know if anybody's going to be able to do it, it's going to be Andy Reid, because we heard Bruce Arians say that he lets Brady do sometimes his own play calling, kind of throwing a shot at Bill Belichick, obviously, and the system he runs up there in New England. But man, if there's anybody you don't want to go against, it's Shanahan, McVay, and probably Reid is the big 3, I would say, obviously, as we've talked about before. So that's going to be important for those guys to get going in the backfield for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs have just been looking unstoppable throughout throughout the playoffs when Mahomes has been healthy. There's just not much stopping this team. I know I mentioned the 2 tackles, but Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, those are what both. Travis Kelce is probably the best tight end. Tyreek Hill, you could argue, is the best wide receiver. Mahomes is the best QB. Like, how do you really stop that?
Yeah, let's trying to pull up some stats here on how Tom Brady has done against the Kansas City Chiefs recently. If I can try to find that. But yeah, make sure you all subscribe to us, because next week, again, it'll be a Super Bowl show, Super Bowl preview, since, of course, the Pro Bowl is going on, but not actually going on because there's no Pro Bowl. But you get your Pro Bowl starters, and you figure that out through next week. And it's going to be a big show. I think we might add a little bit of some prop betting on here. We'll let you guys know on what props and, you know, the crazy stuff in the Super Bowl to bet for, like what color Gatorade is going to be splashed on the winning team, crazy stuff like that. But yeah, we'll save those predictions again for next week. But that has been our Shooters Only podcast episode here, season 2, episode 4. And as we promised, we're going to transition onto the YouTube side. So this is going to be our first appearance here with all our beautiful faces for you all to recognize who we are. But as we do every single week, Shooters Only podcast way, we got to give our bold take of the week. What's the craziest thing that's going to happen this week for you know, across all major sports, not only for the NFL or not only for the NBA? You can put it out to even baseball. We're going to start talking about baseball because there's been a couple of key signings already in the MLB.
I'm going to go to tonight's game, Sixers versus Lakers. I was complaining about Anthony Davis looking a little soft earlier, and I think Joel Embiid takes it to him tonight. 45 points, 18 rebounds, 3 blocks, and he shows he's the best big man in the NBA.
I know you said you didn't feel bad for me earlier on fantasy, but I think you feel bad for me because I need that right now against my matchup. So
yeah,
I'd really
I think
appreciate
it's true because I have Anthony Davis on my fantasy team too. So
I don't know. This might be a strong reverse jinx, as you like to say. Shout out my Bills take last episode, but I think something similar. Probably, actually, no. Let me go with this hot take. This is for the season, though, and then I'll give my actual one.
Okay.
The Blue Jays are going to start banging on trash cans. That's all I'm going to say. But my actual hot take, it's going to be about the Cavaliers versus the Pistons. Colin Sexton might be the best point guard in the NBA right now, the way he's been playing lately, honestly. Not an actuality,
my coffee all over my computer.
As far as a meme, make that a voice clip, make that go viral. Sexland, you guys know what to do. But I think he's gonna have 20 points. He's facing, or not 20, excuse me, 40 points. He's facing the Pistons, so I think that's gonna be something easy for him. And he's gonna have 7 assists too, which is probably his career high. So it still counts as a hot take.
Yeah. I'm gonna switch on to put my baseball hat here on. As you can see here, we got my 2010 Giants here championship thing. They've made a couple of key signings here, underrated this past few days. I'm gonna go with Trevor Bauer. Right, he's gonna be a top free agent on the market right now, and we've seen all the moves and what has been going on. There's been a couple of teams to Trevor Bauer has been associated with. We know all those Angels fans want him there to try to compete, to have somebody with Mike Trout to be with him. But we've seen the New York Mets, not the Yankees, make some crazy trades and moves here in this offseason. So I'm saying by the start of next week's episode, we'll see Trevor Bauer sign with the New York Mets and help bring them into contention there in the NL.
I like it. He'll be bringing his Vaseline too that he uses to, up his spin rate. Shout out to whoever made that YouTube video I was watching.
Well, all right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to season 2, episode 4 of the Shooters Only podcast. Make sure to subscribe on our YouTube channel right here on Shooters Only podcast. Click that link down below. Continue to follow us on Amazon, Spotify, or however you listen to your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in. For Darren Jung and Garrett Garcia, I'm Brandon Cadiz.